All right, hello and welcome to Phoenixville Public Library. I'm Mark Pinto, the Director of Adult Services, welcoming you to our semi-annual open mic night for writers. And happy National Library Week too. Libraries and writers have always had a mutually beneficial relationship, so in addition to celebrating libraries this week, we are also happy to celebrate some of our local writing talent. This is always a fun and inspiring night, and appreciate all the writers who have gathered here today and one on Zoom. Each of you will have 5 minutes to read from your work, and you will hear a sound from my phone when that 5 minutes is up. We are going to start the proceedings with Vince Spezio. He is the head of the Phoenix Fiction Writers Group. Vince, feel free to unmute yourself, and let me read his bio first of all. Vincent Spezio is a once local writer, now living in the Czech Republic, which is why he's coming to us from Zoom tonight. He leads our library's online writing group, the Phoenix Fiction Writers. Vince, take it away. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. First of all, can you hear me well, Mark?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Wonderful. So I lead the fiction writing group. We used to meet in the library. Once COVID happened, we started meeting online, and quite honestly, a lot of our writers find it convenient. So if anyone is looking for a writing group to get involved with, you can do it right from the convenience of your own home. I've got a little piece here that I worked on a little while ago. It probably won't take the full 5 minutes. It's called the Rainbow Decal. Samantha was the first to see it, floating freely out the window, a trapezoid changing to a square and then a rectangle, and then a trapezoid again, flying at an angle that disrupted her depth perception, a blur of red and white. She began to open her register. Dan was the first to hear it, piercing like a baby's cry, him being by the door and entering at the time the sound reached his ears imperceptibly sooner than the others. He had just completed a color run and had come to show his coworkers his garish outfit, stained with cornstarch and sweat. Later, he would wonder if this was what prompted the attack. He jolted and looked to his right in time to see glass splashing inward like water spraying across the room. Aaron was the first to feel it. He did not know Dan or Samantha, or their company, or its policies, the press conference, the controversy. He had a craving for a candy bar that day, stopped in before work. Searing pain filled his head, blotted his eyes, and plugged his ears. The dissociation stopped his anguish as his thoughts fell apart into the void. Jesse was a manager and worked in the back. When the crash came, he leapt up from his chair and sent it spinning behind him. Then he gingerly approached the door, unsure what he would see on the other side. It was Samantha and Dan on the opposite end of the small store, looking at something below them. Dan dropped down, and Jesse stepped around the display to see him crouching. "Call 911, Dan was shouting as Samantha pulled her phone from her pocket. Jesse stepped forward and saw Aaron, a halo of crimson around his head, hair matted and shiny in the back, lying among a spread of glass. Jesse thought he heard an engine screaming wickedly into the distance as he beheld it. The hateful note delivered with a brick, and lying in the glass the rainbow decal that had inspired it.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, give me a couple of minutes. I need to do some adjusting up front here. I'm going to turn the monitor so that it's facing our podium, first of all. And taking the microphone with me. Okay. Testing, hello.
Hello.
Okay. Vince, can you see me at the podium?
Focusing on the audience right now.
Yeah, I see that. Oh, there we go.
Can't
There we go.
hear.
Okay, excellent. Okay, looks like a good view. All right, let us continue. Hey, good.
Yeah.
We're both.
Ticket.
Wow.
Drawing, just to see, determine the order. We'll see.
But he,
Okay. Our next writer,
I can't hear.
it's so cute.
Kathleen Welch. All right,
Read.
Kathleen. This is a tag team event that we're going to have here right now. Kathleen Welch, author, and illustrator Alan McGillivray, moved to Phoenixville last April after spending most of their lives together in New Orleans. Kathleen is a Tulane University professor who teaches online courses in public health, including Alzheimer's prevention. She has been most successful in publishing scientific articles, but has had the opportunity to publish one-act plays and her children's book. She and her husband Alan integrate the arts with public health initiatives. Alan continues to create amazing papier-mâché art pieces too, and won the tinfoil hat contest for Blobfest last year. Please welcome Kathleen and Alan.
I wonder, is there a certain place we should show the book for it to get on the camera? Or
They can see it. Well, actually, might be hard for the camera. Yeah.
Okay. Once upon a tropical time, in the exotic Jala jungle, lived a jolly elephant family who loved to wear purple. They wore purple hats, they wore purple caps, they wore purple skirts, they wore purple shirts. Like any elephant family, there were some wise leaders. Grandma Bawa was one of the wise leaders. She took care of all the little ones. Her nimble truck was like her right hand. It was very helpful in taking care of the children. One morning, she unwound her long trunk to gently nudge her grandson, Mookie, awake. "Rise and shine, sleepyhead." Mookie wobbled a bit when he stood up, and Grandma Bawa saw he was ready for the day. He had slept in his sporty shorts and cap. It was the first day of summer vacation. Mookie wanted to play from the minute he woke up. On his way to kiss Grandma Bawa, he looked up and noticed that something was different.
Grandma, where is your purple hat? You always wear your favorite hat.
"Oh dear, I don't remember where I put it, Wasu. I do like my sun hat. Your Grandpa Bawa just bought it for me yesterday at the flea market."
We'll find it, said Wookie.
They looked on the thorny tree hat rack. Not there. Mookie saw it on a nearby rock.
Here it is,
Said Mookie. He knew that Grandma Bawa sometimes forgot his name, and that Grandpa Bawa had died a long time ago. He didn't correct Grandma Bawa because she was forgetting things. He knew she still loved him all the same. Mookie was ready to go and have some fun.
Grandma, can you show me the way to the Woomba River? We can go splash, play, and cool off.
Just hook up your trunk to my tail, and away we go. Grandma Bawa led the way. She liked to tell family stories. She told Mookie about Grandpa Bawa buying the beautiful hat at the flea market. Grandma Bawa liked that story. She would tell it many times. Mookie didn't mind. He knew that the story made her feel happy.
Grandma, look at our footprints. I think we are going in circles. I think we are lost.
Grandma Bawa was very upset. She had known the way to the river only last week. Now she couldn't remember. Luckily, they ran into Kip, the clever hedgehog. They asked him the way. Kip was not only clever, he was also kind.
Don't worry, Grandma Bawa. You are here, and that's all that matters. I'll be happy to show you the way. I'm hot too.
Kip jumped onto Grandma Bawa's trunk and pointed the way. They reached the river in no time. Grandma Bawa, Mookie, and Kip started to play and bathe. Grandma Bawa always had her special brush for bathing, but not this time. Oh, I forgot my lion whisker brush,
That's okay.
said Kip.
I have a fine natural brush. Me.
Mookie wanted to help too.
Grandma, I'll spray you with my trunk.
Even the jungle butterflies helped Grandma bathe. They softly fluttered over her eyes to shield her from the water and the glare of the sun. Splish, splash, so much fun. Then everything changed. A lion roared. The jungle shook. Birds screeched. Fish jumped. Mookie screamed. Grandma, save us, it's a lion! They needed to act fast. All three waded farther into the river, away from the lion. Oh, they were safe. Then the lion started to slink towards the home of their elephant family.
Okay, it's really amazing the variety of genres represented at our events here tonight. So great. I think that's the first that we've had a children's book, though. So wonderful.
Oh, and I have this for sale, I have only 2 copies, but
Here?
yeah, for $15.
Yep, and there are books by other authors up on the table available for purchase afterwards tonight, too. Feel free to check them out. Neela Kuhn is next. Neela graduated from Tyler School of Art. She lives in Chester County, where she has a studio. She is a visual artist who writes poems. She's a member of Meeting House Writers, where they share their work and get support from the other writers. Please welcome Neela. You can bend the microphone down. If you, yeah.
I'll read a few poems. This one, the first one, is titled Morning. Each morning I stand facing the mirror, brushing wet hair away from sleepy eyes, forcing hot air to do its magic, warm my thoughts and nudge the cobwebs out. My hair flies up and away, most still tethered at the root. I can see in the mirror shadows, splayed on the wall behind. Shadows dancing, leaves swaying, light sparkling, here, now with me, then gone. Leaving the wall colored quiet in the mirror and my mind. The next one is titled 911. Before the wind gusted down the alleyway, before you became old, before I thought it, before the envelope was torn open and the contents spilled, as the aroma of kitchen cooking curled up the carpeted stairway, as the enigmatic smile played across your face, as he popped the top on a ginger ale, as the two of us sang. It's only for a moment, it's all for the best. It might be nothing, it could be something. After dancing with the devil, after jumping off a cliff, after cursing a blue streak, after all of this, if a dust cloud cried. This is titled The Fortune Teller. Looking through a window at the night sky, you ask me why I stayed. I imagine chopping onions, smashing garlic into tiny bits, adding what-ifs into the pot. I can smell possibility rising as all ingredients mingle in this delectable stew. Nourishment for one more day, something I can sink my teeth into. This one is titled Bronx Graffiti. A flower petal floats down and down and down, disappearing into shadow. A fire escape zigs and zags skyward, reaching. Second Avenue Man. On a gray day in a gray city, a gray man stands talking to his shadow. Animated fingers air dance about his head as he shouts at an unseen someone in the vestibule of his mind. Jigsawed on the window pane, I catch his fleeting reflection as thoughts roll off his tongue. Pedestrians cast a sideways glance at this man in dirt gray tee and baggy pants. His self-inflicted argument abruptly ends when he steps back on his heel, makes a left on 2nd Ave, and melts into the lunchtime crowd. And the last one is titled The Major Deacon. It's summer. I'm hot under the collar. Navigating the Major Deacon was scary before. Now it's a whole different level of nuts. Mafia blocks, shuffle traffic. Squeeze 5 lanes down and down and down. Cattle chutes squirt cars into a spastic conga line. 18-wheelers fly across.
You can finish the poem, go ahead.
This pockmarked road as motorcycles ride the line. We snake our way past bright scribbled graffiti as scaffolding tinker-toyed up embankments and over brick walls hide scrawled mottos. Every 10 days like clockwork, I navigate the island roads. North to south in the morning, south to north in the evening. We duck and dodge traffic, bob and weave for safe deliverance. A nomad, armored in cardboard prayer, preys on motorists moving slow. Waif-thin women hawk shrink-wrapped snacks. Men high on fumes offer bottled water. Running, racing, streaming, the Hudson courses its own path. Thank you.
Gayla, thank you. And a good way to celebrate National Poetry Month, too, which this is. All right. Up next is, oh boy, I can't read this. Is this you?
It's a secret.
It is.
It is you. Sorry. Nancy Schwartz. Nancy Schwartz is a master educator with 30 years of teaching experience. She holds certificates as an ELL program specialist, reading specialist, and elementary and early education educator. Her undergraduate degree came from Temple University, and she attended graduate school at St. Joseph's University. Mrs. Schwartz spent several summers studying at the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project at Columbia University. She enjoys ballet, reading, writing, art, animals, acting, music, and most of all, motherhood. Mrs. Schwartz is the published author of 2 books, which you can learn about on her website at www.upnotdownbook.com. Please welcome Nancy.
Thank you. So this is my first book. It's called Up, Not Down Syndrome, and it's basically all the lessons that I've learned from our third son, who doesn't walk yet or talk yet. And it's for Josh, Sam, my other 2 sons, and Alex. And I just start with, do what makes your heart happy. It's a quote from Gina Cutlet Brandy, and it's a human heart drawing by my son, Josh.
How old is Josh?
He's 21. He went to community college for 2 years and is now studying at University of Virginia, biomedical engineering.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I'll just read a short part. This is the introduction, the story of Alex. Soon after our second son, Sam, was born, my husband, Michael, lost his job. My earnings had already been cut in half because I was on maternity leave from my teaching position. So our family endured a full year with no second income. But as they do, things turned around. Michael got a new job. I went back to school teaching English language learning. Sam and his older brother Josh were happily developing into wonderful young boys. Both Sam and Josh's teachers regularly regaled Michael and me with stories about how our boys helped their fellow classmates. When I went to pick up the boys at school, other parents would stop me to say what incredible, kind, sweet, amazing, fine young men I was raising. And that was before our family was hit with what turned out to be the best of all possible disasters when our third son, Alex, was born. Josh would be the one to say a last goodbye to Pop-Up when he passed on before the service at Goldstein's in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Pop-Up is what the boys called their grandfather, Michael's father. Josh is fearless. At age 14, Josh took the train to the city with friends. I was worried, but I needn't have been. Everything went well. Josh has always been advanced beyond his years, responsible and fun. I'll never forget how Sam gave his stuffed bear, named Bear, to Alex. Bear stayed with Sam through his Pop-Up's passing, Alex's birth, and more. It was a majestic quality of love, sewn in from a dime store on Long Beach Island. The day Sam gave Bear to Alex, I cried. I cried at his generosity, but also at the awareness that Sam was growing up. I love Alex, Josh, and Sam more than anyone. I want them all to be healthy and happy. Luckily, Josh and Sam are continuing to flourish. They have remained pillars of hope and strength, unobtrusive and easy to please. There are billions of examples of how extraordinary both Sam and Josh are. When I think about all they will be, it fills me with a pride that does not end. I'll just stop there, but that's just the beginning of that book. Is there time to do a short?
Yeah, you got 2 minutes,
So
2.5
this
minutes.
is the second book about Alex. It's called Up Bow, Down Bow, and even though he doesn't walk yet or talk yet, he's studying the cello, and he's been doing it for 4 years. So today was a lesson. Every week he has a lesson, and this was the day of his first lesson with his teacher who couldn't be here. She's in 2 pit orchestras, teaches full-time, and is getting married, so she's a little bit Up Bow, Down Bow. It's in memory of my dad, Martin Levine, whose mom, she had lived here in Phoenixville. Martin Levine, my father-in-law, Lenny Schwartz, my mother-in-law, Sandy Schwartz, my mother, Joanne Liebenberg Levine, and for Charlotte Figge, who changed our role. And April wrote, it's for her parents, thank you for their endless love, support, and energy, and for every child who thinks they can't, you can. As you've discovered, so many things are possible, just as long as you don't know they are impossible. And that's Norton Juster from the book, The Phantom Tollbooth. For there's always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. And that's from The Hill, Amanda Gorman. This is another piece of art from Josh about a sunflower. And there's Alex. I'll just read a quick part. So the book is a story, but then it's in Alex's voice if he could speak. So at the end of each chapter, it's as if he were talking. So this is Alex. I feel so special and blessed. I absolutely love my family. They do so much for me. I love the school I go to. My teachers and friends are the best. I love the world. Mom and Dad, even though I may not make you Mother's or Father's Day cards or tell you how much I love you, I hope you know I do. I hope you know I think you are the best mom and dad in the whole wide world. Here, let me play a song for you.
Thank you. Yes, good.
Books for sale if anyone wants.
Did you bring
I
copies
do
for
have-
sale?
yes.
Excellent.
You have to be
Okay,
mine.
good. All right. So, all right, next up we have Chris Alden. Christopher Alden is a common curmudgeon, lucky enough to have had uncommon experiences. While serving in the Coast Guard, he traveled to unusual places such as the South Pole, Greenland, the Arctic, and Cleveland. He grew up in the Detroit area and graduated from the University of Michigan. Christopher practices the lost art of land navigation without GPS and believes Westworld is an eventuality while responsible government is not. His writing reflects his search for meaning behind the absurdities and bruises of everyday life. Please welcome Chris Alden.
Thank you, and thank you, Mark, for putting this on a regular basis. Always enjoy it. This is a piece that has been condensed from a larger piece and reflects an incident that happened to me when I lived in Japan. It's called Beware of Cultural Exchange. In the summer of 1989, the Coast Guard sent me to Hokkaido, Japan, where I did my best to absorb and honor Japanese culture instead of being an ugly American and running over it. However, there were a few times of colossal failure, and one of these might have resulted in damaged international relations had it played out on a larger stage instead of at the local level. Bart was the station's mechanic, and while I was responsible for the maintenance of the buildings and the grounds, he had been at the station almost a year when I arrived. We fast became friends. Bart was on the hunt for a Japanese wife and never missed an opportunity to meet girls. But luck had not gone his way, and he remained, despite his best efforts, girl-friendless. One afternoon he came into my room and plopped himself into my chair. "Do you have duty next Saturday?" he asked. "'Cause if you do, get someone to switch with you. I have to have a wingman. Yuriko has invited me to have dinner with her parents." "Who's Yuriko?" I asked. Bart always talked about the girls he was chasing, but I hadn't heard about this one yet. "I met her a few weeks ago, but I've been keeping her under wraps because I don't want to curse myself by blabbing about it too soon." "Meeting the parents sounds like a big deal." "Yeah, that's a big deal here. Plus, she told them I am an American, so they're doubly curious to meet me. Anyway, I need a wingman, so there's more conversation." "What do you mean, more conversation?" I asked, a little wary. "Well, they don't speak English and neither does she." "So, you've been communicating in sign language?" "Well, I know some Japanese and she has a friend who's been interpreting for us, but her friend is not going to be there." "Yeah, well, I don't know any Japanese." "I know that. But two people in these situations is always better than one. You said you wanted to embrace Japanese culture while you're here. Well, you can't get much more cultural than having dinner in someone's home. But there are some things you have to learn. You have a week." Then he proceeded to give me a list of the things I needed to learn. And they included learning some Japanese phrases, lots of chopstick practice, and how to show you're enjoying the meal by slurping at appropriate times. They also stated that if I was not used to sitting cross-legged for extended periods, I should limber up. I began training by eating every meal with chopsticks, even when snacking on chips and eating cereal. I watched all the Karate Kid flicks and tried catching flies with them in my workshop. I learned some Japanese phrases. I stretched whenever possible and sat cross-legged on the floor in my room before bed every night. The big day came and we drove in Bart's car through the rolling hills and farmland to Yuriko's house. "Do you know anything about her parents?" I asked. "She says they're really strict, very traditional parents. I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know they're going to be evaluating us, so be on your best behavior. No excess drinking unless they keep pouring sake, and remember to slurp if they serve ramen." When we arrived, we found that Yuriko's parents had prepared a feast with some items recognizable and some a complete mystery. Conversation was challenging but fun. Things went smoothly, and Yuriko and her parents seemed happy. Yuriko's father passed me a bowl of meat. My chopstick practice had paid off, and I confidently picked up the medium-sized piece and popped it into my mouth. It was lean, with not much taste, kind of stringy, and tough to chew. I swallowed, and the piece went halfway down before stopping. I said to myself. I swallowed a little harder, but it was lodged in my throat. Then I realized that a piece of the stringy fat was jammed between my molars. And I thought, all right, what am I going to do about this situation? Nothing on the cultural lists of do's and don'ts that Bart had given me said anything about shoving your hand down your throat in front of your host, trying to rip out a piece of meat that he had just offered you. I thought of going to the bathroom so I could remove it. I looked at the father, who seemed to be looking at me to check if I liked the meat. I gave him a wan smile while trying to get Bart's attention and wondering how I'm going to ask for the bathroom when I can't speak. He was busy hand gesturing to Yuriko and her mom, trying to explain something about American cars, when finally I gave him a shove to the shoulder and he looked over at me. I pointed to my throat. Then, not really knowing what else to do, pointed at my crotch, thinking he would understand I had to go to the bathroom. He gave me a look of disgust. "What?" he asked. "Are you trying to tell me?" I couldn't remember the signal for an international sign for choking, so I pointed at my throat again. Yuriko and her parents were keenly watching, probably thinking this is a mysterious American method of communication. Bart finally said, "Dude, if you have to use the bathroom, it's around the corner." Unfortunately, by this time, I had passed the point of my cross-legged endurance, and my legs had fallen asleep. I couldn't get up. But even worse, due to a very sensitive gag reflex, my body had had enough. My stomach contracted violently once, and then twice, and then completely rejected every morsel of food in it. The stream seemed to go on forever until I was depleted. The smiles on Yuriko and her parents transformed into horrified gasps. Bits of the food carnage stream had sprayed on their clothes. Bart was astonished and then angry. I said to myself, wow, this is the most embarrassing moment of my life. But the stringy piece of meat lodged in my throat had come flying out, and I could breathe again. I was saved. Well, we never got invited back to that house, and I don't think Bart ever saw Yuriko again. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick Barry. Patrick Barry was born in Lansdale, PA. He began writing in 2018, was a winner of the Gunnar B. Carlson Memorial Foundation Creative Writing Contest before graduating from Immaculata University, and received an honorable mention from Writers of the Future. He lives in Phoenixville, and The Cursed Lake is his first book. The book is available on Amazon KDP. Welcome, Patrick.
All right, and that basically sums me up. So what I'll be reading is the first chapter of The Cursed Lake. So, begins with Valley of Eternal Gales. So when my father ran through the village praising the man who floated upon the cursed lake, I knew we were as good as dead. I stood in my bamboo tower and whistled over the elderly man's distant shouts. I needed to concentrate if I was going to make this one sturdier than the other towers. This tower will stand against the gales. I carved a joint into both ends of the bamboo stalk I had whittled with my spearhead, and grit my teeth as I pushed the beam into place. While the man inevitably gained some muscle while he made bamboo masterpieces for a living. My gangly arms ached for a minute before I yelped and fell on all fours when the beam snapped into place. I sprang upright through my robe's hood over my blushing cheeks and scanned the village of bamboo huts and dirt paths below in case any of my fellow surging river clansmen had heard me struggle. The clansmen smirked at my tower as they salvaged bamboo from their crushed huts. Others laughed and chattered about how I was the second scrawniest man in the village, right next to my father. I dropped my hood when the clansmen returned to their own business. I slathered glue made from crushed trout into the tower's last cross-section and cranked a lever. The structure creaked on its stilts as wing-like appendages made of thatch and twine extended to form a wall. I never had enough time to build a proper wall against the gales before they plowed through our village. But these wings at least expanded our bamboo defense, so it shielded our 8 remaining lopsided huts. When will Father stop hollering about saviors and curses? Just because he's too old to hunt with the clan doesn't mean he has to keep everyone from the bamboo grove for fear of the ice crawler curse, freezing our limbs too. Though that wasn't the worst of it. Rather than freezing men alive, Father just had to make his followers think that the curse was also what drew the gales through our village on its way to the bamboo grove. All this nonsense because his leg got paralyzed after he returned from fishing in the grove. Normally, such a decree would leave us without any shelter against the gales, because the grove was the only place to harvest bamboo in our valley. Other than that, only tall grass and brambles reached toward the horizon in all directions. While the other clansmen could tremble at the thought of approaching the bamboo grove all they liked, but I hadn't hesitated from sneaking there every night to cut down the grove's outlying stalks before the gales arrived. Though my fellow clansmen never let their fear of the cursed grove keep them from tearing apart my inferior towers for bamboo, less fractured than the stalks they scavenged from their huts. Don't you fret, Father. I glanced over my shoulder in case he started to yell at me. This will be the last tower I'll need to harvest bamboo for. I leaned on my platform's railing and slapped the cross-section I had reinforced. I grinned when my finest tower barely quaked against the force. I've made everything we need. As far as I'm concerned, we'll never have to worry about the gales again. The tower shivered, and I glared over the railing. A group of clansmen were clustered around one of the stilts. They were only specks from below, from my angle, who knocked their knuckles against the side of my tower. See any sign of northerners from up there, man? Getting a wish granted from one of those mystical men is the only way you could salvage all this wasted bamboo. He gestured disdainfully at my tower. If the clansman who shook one of my tower stilts didn't have arms like northerners, he would have blended in with the others. His wrap skirt and poncho made of tall grass were tattier than his fellow clansmen's. He shook his head at my tower, yanked out a snapped bamboo stalk that protruded from one of the piles beside my tower, and hurled it at me. Spot one, and we'll ask whether we can trade you for one of their mutts. It keeps going, so.
How much do you have?
Let's see. About double what I just read.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that's,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, appreciate it, thank you, Ted. Look for his book on Amazon, all right. Teresa Werba. All right. Teresa, formerly Teresa Rodriguez, is the author of 3 books of poetry, most recently Sonnets, a collection of 65 sonnets, Shanty Arts 2020. Her work has appeared in such journals as the Scarlet Leaf Review, the Wilderness House Literary Review, Spindrift, Mezzocommon, The Wombwell Rainbow, Fevers of the Mind, Serotonin, The Art of Autism, The Road Not Taken, and the Society of Classical Poets Journal. Her work ranges from forms such as the ode and sonnet to free verse, with topics ranging from neurodivergence, the writing process, love, loss, and aging, to faith and disillusionment. Her website is www.bardsinger.com, where you can view videos of her performance poetry and find information about her books. Follow Teresa on Instagram and Twitter at The Sonnet Queen. Please welcome Teresa.
Thank you, Mark. This is my book, Sonnets, 65 sonnets. Haven't written that many since the publication of it, but if you like formal poetry, I do have some copies here. I wanted to read 3 of my favorites. I just decided to read three of my favorite sonnets. So my first one is Gray Sonnet. You say that you are gray, but do you know how shades of gray are complementary to russet, red, maroon, or crimson's flow, and other hues of blood that bleed from me? You admix, so you say, of black and white. But did you notice how the dawn of gray will burst with yellow purples, pinks, and light when face to face, confronted with the day? Then you are every color and are none, for black absorbs and white reflects. Yet free in alchemy, the rigid comes undone. And then my spectrum you more clearly see. For gray to dwell alone is gray indeed, when colors yearn to contrast, blend, and bleed. This one, which is next to it, is called Inside the Hollow Square. It is a moment or a spot in time when time is quieted and put away, a simple thing becoming the sublime, suspended and eternal in a day. And all around me just dissolves to naught. I feel my world around me disappears. It is just me before you. I am caught between my happiness and many fears. You look at me as if you've known before all that I am in heart and soul and mind, or wish to know them here and now and more. These gazes that reveal and seek entwined. For then I look up and I realize I get lost when I look into your eyes. The last of these, of my little set here, is called Oh When I Think Back. Oh, when I think back to those halcyon days when I believed the possibility that truest love would manifest to me and highest hopes would set the heart ablaze, I looked amidst the heat and smoke and haze to find this source of reciprocity, to find the embers glowing earnestly, which gave me joy, but it was not to be. For passion only came from in my heart, and not another, For it was not you who loved me back, but bid me to depart, and stomped upon the yearning fires too. For all my dreams were thus deludedly the conflagrations of a fantasy. Thank you.
Okay, who do we have next? Next we have,
Mark, we don't have Dick or whomever on the screen anymore. Just so you know.
I guess they had other things. Bill Lambert is next. Bill Lambert is, that's got to be a misprint, it's got to be 38 years old, right? Bill Lambert is 83 years old, born in...
Dyslexic, Mark, it's
Okay. He was born in Bethlehem, PA, and grew up in that area. His career choice was drafting and design technology, comically known as DDT. In 1974, he lived and worked in Allentown when, totally by chance, on a July Sunday afternoon in a tiny town in Virginia, he met Eileen Fleming, a middle school teacher who resided in Broomall. 10 seconds either way, and it never would have happened. They married in 1975 and moved to Pottstown, then permanently to Phoenixville in 1978. His last position was with a large consulting engineering firm in Pottstown, from which he was laid off in 1990. Eileen retired in 1993, and from then until she passed in 2019, they traveled extensively. Bill's writing, prompted by friends and acquaintances as, "Gee, you ought to write a book," is about the wonderful life and times he and his lovely Eileen enjoyed in their 44 years of marriage. Bill, welcome.
Thank you. Most of our travels were confined, well, extensively through our country and a bit in Canada. We never got off this patch of dirt because there's too much to see here. Although a lot of our friends said, well, why don't you go to Europe? No, right here. Anyway, during our travels, our favorite lodgings were always bed and breakfasts. And we stayed at over 40 of them, some more than once. After exiting the Blue Ridge Parkway and Skyline Drive at Front Royal, Virginia, the drive's northern terminus, on our last Southlands trip, we overnighted for the second time at the nearby inn at Vaucluse Spring. Since our first visit, they acquired a resident gourmet chef who grew herbs and veggies on the property and prepared delicious meals. And after registering, we immediately reserved for dinner. While being seated for dinner with wine lists and menus, we noticed there were only two other patrons there, another couple at a table about 15 feet away or so. The host returned and asked, "Eileen, would you care for a wine?" And she requested. Then, "Bill, how about you?" And I chose. Presenting the wines, the host inquired, "Eileen, are you ready to order?" And she responded. Next, "And Bill?" And I ordered. A few minutes elapsed, after which the fellow at the other table asked, "Did I hear correctly you're Bill and Eileen?" And we answered, "Why, yes, we are." And he countered, "Well, Bill and Eileen, meet Bill and Eileen." And we all had a good laugh. The host, when serving our meals, mentioned that she also noticed the coincidence and marveled at it. As the four of us were leaving, we chatted about our particulars. They lived in a small town near Trenton, New Jersey. Our home was Phoenixville, PA. We men had nothing more in common than our names. But the other Eileen worked at the library in their town, while our Eileen had her master's degree in library sciences and volunteered for many years at the Phoenixville Library. That was just one of our unusual coincidences, particularly in our travels. What kind of time do I have left?
Got 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I got another one that I'm in the embryonic stages of writing this book, but I've had good comments about it. But we traveled a lot by train, and and travels, we had over 80,000 miles just on Amtrak. And the last trip we took, we were leaving Washington, D.C., heading for Chicago, and came time for dinner, we went to the diner. And what happens is they have a four-top booth. They seat you on a bench seat on one side, a couple like Eileen and I, and two people at random or one person at random on the other side. So we were seated at this, by the attendant at this one booth, and there was a fellow sitting across from us reading. And we didn't want to disturb him, so it was just, hi, how you doing? And, fine, how are you? And that was it. So it left one vacancy. In a couple of minutes, another fellow came in, singular, and he was seated next to the first one. He turned to the first one and he says, hi, I'm Bill. First guy said, so am I. The two of them looked at me. I said, three of a kind. Then they looked at Eileen and the latecomer said, if your name is Billy, we're going to Las Vegas. But of course it wasn't. At any rate, I could go on because there were so many beautiful experiences we had. And all of these are true. My verifier-in-chief passed 3.5 years ago, but she could tell you that they all were true, and we enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Jim Sassaman is next. James F. Sassaman is a novelist whose book, Dempsey's Diner, is currently being submitted to literary agents. Framed by Watergate, it is a late adolescent coming-of-age novel depicting the end of the hippie era. James, welcome.
Okay, thank you. This is from the end of part one. It's late summer 1972. Heading down to Dempsey's Diner with Ruthie at twilight Saturday night. We're on the south side of High Street, 2 blocks away from the High and Hathaway intersection, when, without explanation, I say, let's cross over. I am already jaywalking when I hear her ask, why? Trust me, I know what I'm doing. She has to trust me because it makes no sense to cross over to the north side of High when Dempsey's is on the south side. But she hasn't seen what I see, that unmistakable patch of flaming red hair. When we're both on the other side, I say, brace yourself. We're about to come face to face with Colleen Burns. Ruthie gets it now, and she can see 2 girls, a redhead and some blonde I've never seen before. They're sitting on the little brick wall surrounding the 5-story masonry bank building at High and Hathaway. Ruthie knows from our past talks that the redhead is Colleen Burns. Just then, Colleen looks up and sees us coming her way. She maintains her glance just long enough to determine it's me all right, and then she turns back to face the blonde and resume conversation. It doesn't look like Colleen's giving her any notice of my approaching, or else that girl might be tempted to look over our way. Ruthie doesn't say anything, and I don't say anything, as I maintain a steady pace, which Ruthie maintains along with me. And maintain pace we do. At the very second we are parallel to the little brick wall, Colleen turns to face me and says, hello. This hello is not curt, but then again it's not overly friendly either. It's simply spoken in a civil manner. And as I take a direct shot at those cool and limpid green eyes, I respond by a slight wave of my right hand and an even slighter nod of my head, all while maintaining the same steady pace. Ruthie maintains my pace as we continue towards Dempsey's. She maintains silence until not just our getting beyond hearing distance, but after a very respectful pause. Pretty girl, ain't that the truth? I can see why you're spitting with her. And after another pause, are you okay? Yeah. What are you thinking of? Tanto gentile e tanto onesta pare. Aquinas? Dante. Inferno? Vita Nuova. What's it mean? How kind and virtuous she appears. They all seem that way in the beginning, darling. Edie is our waitress tonight. We give orders for coffee, to which Ruthie adds, black for slim, and Edie returns with the carafe, but she's not holding it above her head this early at night. As she sets down our cups and pours, she turns to Ruthie and says, "I can't wait for bowling season to start so I can see all my boyfriends again." And the two of them get into a long conversation about bowling of all things. In the meantime, I flip through the booth jukebox and make my selection. Nothing else is playing, so when Ruthie hears the song begin, she knows it's mine. But she's puzzled after the opening acoustic bass notes and asks, "Who's this?" "Wayne Newton." "Wayne Newton? Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton," Edie responds. "Can't you tell?" The two of them resume their bowling talk. As Wayne Newton does his second balcony thing, I know that I am lucky not to have shown up alone for that chance encounter with Colleen. Showing up with a dame is always better than showing up with my high school buddies. And it's better that I showed up with Ruthie instead of Ollie because Colleen and Ollie know each other. Colleen likes Ollie and Ollie likes to talk, and it might have placed Ollie in a awkward position. Colleen has no idea who Ruthie is. And she has no idea that I'm putting off Villanova and staying with the river job until I land a job at a plant. There's no way she knows, nor would she ever believe, that I'm smoking herb now. Although she would be surprised about my screenplay plans, her family would certainly laugh at them. So our last kiss turns out to be not her last goodbye. Her hello tonight is her farewell. And once I do walk away from the river job, I will no longer be drenched in oil, and I will return to carrying Colleen's lock of hair on my person day and night. That's it.
Definitely want to be the first library to buy a copy of that book when you get your publisher there. Excellent. Okay. Greg Fox. All right, Greg. Greg Fox says he wrote poetry in high school as a way to get girls to go out with him. He then went on to earn a degree in English literature from St. Joe's, but never thought he could make a living with words. Ironically, he worked as a newspaper reporter and editor, then taught creative writing at Phoenixville Middle School for 20 years. He retired in 2020 during the COVID lockdown. He writes short stories that almost always include references to Catholicism and his own father. Is trying to master the art of the vignette, makes attempts at poetry, songwriting, and rap, but otherwise does not take his writing seriously. He has absolutely no interest in being published and has nothing worthwhile to say to you tonight. Sure he doesn't. Go ahead, Greg.
A long-winded yarn that builds on the audience's expectation yet leads to an anticlimax containing neither a point nor a lesson is often referred to in writing circles as a shaggy dog story. Hopefully you will find a point to my story. Okay? This is a true story of mistaken identity. My dad used to say, people will judge you by the clothes you wear, so if you know for a fact that you are indeed stupid, at least try to look smart. With this in mind, I made it a point of wearing a white button-up shirt and tie to my teaching job almost every day of the week. However, there are a few life experiences I dread more than the chill of thin polyester blend against my naked flesh on a cold winter morning. To alleviate this inconvenience every year, usually around Thanksgiving, I would order 4 black, medium-sized, 100% cotton mock turtleneck pullover shirts from the LL Bean catalog. These, I surmised, accompanied by a blazer, created the impression that I was of learned stock, much in the image of a college professor or Beat Generation poet. Along with the aforementioned black variety, I would also include 1 white mock turtleneck shirt into my order, which I would wear with a pair of Levi's and sneakers on Fridays, our official dress-down day. One particularly frigid midweek morning in February, while peering into the dresser drawer reserved for my collection of mock turtlenecks, I was confronted with the realization that I had not transferred any of the black variety from the washing machine to the dryer the night before. This left me with no option than to adorn myself with the remaining white mock turtleneck. With outside temperatures in the single digits, I decided to forego the usual blazer, opting instead for a heavy black sweater. These, along with thick woolen pea coat, were to keep me quite toasty during my long drive to work. The school day progressed without incident, and I was able to complete my mundane end-of-the-day task well ahead of schedule. I decided to use my extra time to drop by St. Joseph's University on my way home. to obtain an official copy of my undergraduate transcripts as requested by the school district's PR department. St. Joe's, I should explain, is an esteemed Jesuit institution that straddles City Line Avenue in Philadelphia. Leaving the middle school parking lot a little past 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I managed to handily negotiate the Schuylkill Expressway and then Lancaster Avenue to arrive at the records office about 20 minutes before closing. Once inside, I was dismayed to find it buzzing with students, all standing in one long line at a counter where a single attendant was stamping forms with a reverberating thud. After filling out the required transcript request form, I took my place at the end of the line. The attendant was an attractive young woman with dark, wavy hair, who I judged to be a bit older than the people she was serving. And I noticed she had suddenly become quite annoyed with the young man standing in front of her. I could not hear what they were saying to each other, but when the young man began to wildly flail his arms and hands, the young woman reached across the counter and forcefully pushed him off to one side. Then, careening to look directly at me, she said, "I can take that for you now, Father." Like the parting of the Red Sea, every person in line ahead of me turned to look, then stepped out of my way, offering me a direct, unobstructed path to the counter. Still somewhat confused, I sheepishly approached with my transcript request and handed it to the young woman, where she swiftly stamped it with a hard thud, tore off one of the carbon copies, and handed it back to me. Then she said, "I will have this in the mail for you tomorrow morning, Father." I leaned in real close. "Bless you, my child," in an almost whisper. "But I'm not a priest." "I know that," she snapped, "but I was just about to punch that kid in the face and I needed to take a breath." She threw me a wink and shouted, "Next." Turning to make my exit, I was delighted to see smiles on some of the faces of the people I had just bumped out of line. As I walked by, each one of them offered me a polite greeting. "Hello, Father." "Good afternoon, Father." "Father." "Enjoy your evening, Father." I, in turn, felt obliged to reciprocate each with a small blessing in the Southern Cross. Later that evening, while discussing the event with my wife, I came to the conclusion that my case of mistaken identity had taught me a valuable, if reusable, life lesson that I should share with all of you. And it goes like this: if you ever need something done in a hurry, just throw on a black sweater over a white mock turtleneck shirt. The results will amaze both you and your friends.
Thank you, Ray. George Reitnauer is up next. He's written poetry for 46 years. He is a lawyer, married to audiologist Melissa Reitnauer, has 2 children, is a member of Royersford Baptist Church, Oddfellows, and Anthroposophical Society, and has lived in the Kimberton, Spring City, Parker Ford area for most of his life. George Reitnauer, welcome.
Hi. Here's a library poem. This was written at the Philadelphia Library in 1982. Oaken grillwork spans the shadowy expanse of ceiling above the chandelier's prismatic glow, while 50 feet below, around the giant table slump the survivors, hard-eyed, cool, each one a civilization unto him or herself, fettered to externalities only by the common barbarisms of language and its understandings. So, into the library staggers the old man with his hot rum breath humming. Secretly, everyone looks, as he well knows. He sees a leather-bound dictionary on the nearest table, my table, and gasping, singing, sort of spitting, lays his hands down hard on the book and drags it toward the edge. He sits carefully, straight-backed as a deacon's chair, turning pages, muttering page by page, until he stops turning, breathing. Rip. The place goes absolutely quiet while we register the possibilities. Being from outside town, I hope for the best. He starts muttering and turning pages again, stops. Rip. There's no doubt now. He's folding the torn pages into squares, tucking them into his shirt. I shake like a Roman looking up from his Ovid to find vandals pillaging the parlor. Oh man, don't do that, I say softly to him, painfully. He won't look, turns pages. Hey, buddy, buddy. I tap the table with my finger. Buddy, don't do that. Finally, he looks and explains. Just a couple more pages and I'll be done, and turns back to his work. This one's called Young Buddha's Body Surfing. I love body surfing down at New Jersey. Unbalanced, water comes to him. He is where he has to be to capture the illusion of motion, crouched, slim and drawn slack. The unenlightened one turns toward shore. With the first surge, he lunges, limbs churning, racing the hung crest. Then it plunges him into its roar headlong, purblind down through engines of foam subsiding, till skimming the backward sliding sands he finds our land, rises from swirls of broken shells, and launches himself at the sea again. Thanks.
Thank you, Drew. Okay. Dan Erdman. Dan Erdman is a geologist and licensed site remediation professional. He's the principal of an environmental consulting firm he founded in 2004. When not writing technical documents, he writes poetry, an activity he has dabbled in for several decades. He is presently organizing his collection for the publication of 2, maybe 3 books. He has been published in a few of Katie Comer's Affinity Collab issues, is an active participant in the Meeting House Writers Group, frequently reads at the monthly Steel City open mic in Phoenixville and Char and Stave in Ardmore, and is returning to the Phoenixville Library this evening for his 4th time and counting. Thanks, Dan. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Reading House is very well represented here, too. I'm going to read 2 pieces. First one, a short one called Dark Cloud. Dark cloud drifts above the scorched farmland and hungry village, drips but one tear and whispers a hope and a prayer as it passes. Then drifts out over the ocean to scream a rainstorm into its own kind. The second one I wrote because I realized I was watching too much political news and all the commercials that comes with it, and I needed to get out to one of my favorite spots in the world in Chester County here, a grove of trees where I could just sit and chill out. And when I shared this poem with a good friend of mine who is a Reiki master and into spiritual healing and stuff, she told me that I wrote a poem about Shinrin Yoku. It's Japanese. Does that strike a bell with you, Chris?
No.
In Japanese, it means forest bathing. And apparently in Japan, if you go to a doctor and you're stressed out or something, you'll get a prescription to go into the forest and meditate. So I call this one Truth Among the Trees, but then I learned I could have called it Shinrin Yoku. Can I see the wind? I cannot see the wind as I sit inside watching the news. I turn and look out the window and see the effects of a mass of turbulent air moving across my path of vision, bending ornamental shrubbery, flapping clothes on a clothesline, unanchored debris bouncing along the sidewalk and lawns, people bending into the turbulence and holding onto their hats. But I cannot see the wind. Am I listening to the wind? No, I am not. I am not listening to the wind. I can hear the whistling roof vents in this building as air is forced into them. And I can hear frantic rustling of the neighbor's wooden fence, the deep pitch of overhead power lines, and rusted wind chimes on a back porch protesting their tethering. But I am listening to political news and commercials on the radio, and I am not listening to the wind. I look again through my window onto the creaking fence and flapping clothes, commercials, news, static and opposing views, and I think how hard it was for me to vote for Y. But I never hated my country enough to vote for X. And I don't get it why anybody needs an AR-15 anyway. And there are so many medications for diseases I have never heard of before. Certainly, I must have at least one of these diseases, so I should just buy the pills. I could always call a law firm from the last commercial if things go wrong. I hear they are waiting for my call and have helped thousands like me. It's time to leave the noise and the news and feel the wind, step outside and into it, close my eyes and walk a while in it, become aware of the arithmetic turbulence of what it carries. I should breathe in and then exhale, allowing myself to be cleansed and changed ever so slightly by what is in each breath that passes through me. The wind nudges me toward the forest. I am no wider than the trees on the edge of this forest. And the wind upon my back applies no more force than it does upon the trunks of these trees at ground level, though they stand stoic as I move past. I am guided deeper into the welcoming forest, where there are taller, older trees in random patterns, dissipating, confusing, and diffusing the wind, until the wind gives up, drops whatever it was carrying, and ceases to be a wind. And it is deeper in this forest where I no longer feel even a breeze upon my back. And it's here where the bark on the trees of the taller oak tree, of the taller ones at my eye level talk to me and say that they haven't felt a wind in decades, ever since the forest spread, surrounded them, and sheltered them into this peaceful place. They don't have my will or my legs, they muse to me, to wander off to the edge of the forest or beyond to feel the wind. They tell me they are okay with this. And as I feel humbled and cleansed and accept that these trees are so much taller than me, they invite me to rest on the forest floor and to look up to their bays of branches, to where their highest, supple, young growth sways, and lets truth trickle down to where I rest.
25 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Rich Wilhelm is up next, and my apologies, I did not include his bio in the handout there. I will revise it and send it out to everybody on Zoom and here tonight and email that out to you. I'll let Rich introduce himself.
Okay, I will do that. So my name is Rich Wilhelm. I am a writer, I'm a cemetery tour guide, some of you know that. I have a website which is called The Dichotomy of the Dog. These days, all of my entries are 217 words long, exactly, and I'm going to read a couple of those entries now. This first one explains that. It's called 217, Step Right Up. It was something my dad said as we pulled into the church parking lot one Sunday morning. He said, and this might not be exactly what he said, but it's close. Dad's voice here. I have found that the number 217 pops up often in my life. That stuck with me, and it's been nearly 50 years, but it still sticks with me. It sticks with me the same way Tom Waits singing huckster slogans like a crazed Louis Armstrong has stuck with me since some other Sunday morning, when Step Right Up was playing on the radio as we pulled into that same church parking lot. Or maybe Dad said the 217 thing on the same Sunday morning as Tom Waits was singing Step Right Up on the radio as we pulled into that church parking lot. That's entirely possible because Dad and Tom Waits both possess a certain wisdom, you know? The kind of wisdom you might not get in church on certain Sunday mornings. Anyway, it's funny how these things stick with you. And maybe, just maybe, it's the cool little things that stick with you over the course of your lifetime that can help unstick you when you're feeling stuck. Tom Waits' voice here. Step right up, step right up, step right up. The second one, I just wrote this. This is yesterday's entry on my website. It's called The Parable of the Giant Red Bird and the Guys Driving Around Looking for Photo Ops. Many years ago, there was a giant red bird who lived in Fraser, Pennsylvania. Friends of the bird asked him if he'd like to spend a weekend standing by Route 30 and waving to the people driving cars up and down the road. The giant bird wasn't sure if he wanted to do this. After all, he thought, I must rest up for the monthly meeting of the Numismatist Club, which I never miss. On the other hand, the bird thought, somebody driving down Route 30 might need to see me there by the side of the road. I'll do it. And so it was that the giant red bird stationed himself by the side of the road early one Saturday morning and began waving to passerby. One such passerby was not pleased and flipped an entirely different kind of bird to the giant red bird. But then it happened. A car drove by and then suddenly pulled into the parking lot where the bird was stationed. Two guys jumped out of the car and ran to the bird with great excitement. We decided to drive down 30 this morning looking for photo ops, exclaimed one of the guys as he waved a Polaroid camera, and we found you. The giant red bird had found its purpose. True story. This is another true story. This is called The Tale of the Boy Who Wants to Rock. A twisted sister pin finds its forever home. This is the tale of the boy who wants to rock, hereinafter known as the BWWTR. The BWWTR is 5.5 years old now. He was 4 when I met him. His parents brought him along for a tour I gave him and his mom and dad at Laurel Hill Cemetery. The tour was a gift from the BWWTR's dad to the BWWTR's mom for her birthday. The boy's dad had given me advance notice that the boy wants to rock, so I came prepared. I wore a pin proclaiming I want to rock on my shirt. This was no fake retro pin either. It was a real retro pin, probably purchased at a Spencer's Gifts circa 1985. I also found a way to logically incorporate an actual snippet of Twisted Sister's song I Want to Rock into the tour. This was easy enough to do, since my tour that day ended at the gravesite of opera singer David Bispham, a man who clearly wanted to rock in the early 20th century American opera singer sense of rocking. Even if the boy who wants to rock didn't care about rocking, he still would have been great fun to have on my tour. But the fact remains, this boy wants to rock. And that's why my vintage I Want to Rock pin will now be residing permanently on the Boy Who Wants to Rock's backpack. One more, real quick.
10 seconds, though.
What's that?
10 seconds.
Okay, forget it. But I do have brand new cards here.
Oh, yeah.
So if anybody's interested, you can follow along. And thanks for very much.
Thank you. Okay, Christine Emmert is up next. Christine Emmert has just published her book, Dreaming of Storms. She takes pleasure in writing across the genres. You can find her work read and performed in the USA, UK, and Canada. Often she collaborates with her husband Richard on theater projects. This summer they are appearing at the Avenue Theater in Helena, Montana in Love Letters, July 14th, 15th, and 16th. Over 60 years in theater, and she has never lost her love for it. Welcome, Christine.
Okay. All right, Dreaming of Storms. I have to read some of it for you. The wider universe admits disturbance with tugs and pushes against the very centers of holding. Oh, I know I cannot fight these tensions. I cannot even see them, except in the realm of my dreams that toss me from galaxy to galaxy in a movement as light and playful as the burp of stars in their cosmic nurseries, sometimes not as light and playful as burps, but propulsion, both dramatic and abrupt. Ever since I was a child, I have been the victim of these ebbs and flows. In a sense, I have been forever birthing, but never completely birthed. When I wake, my senses cool down from such fluctuation to the harmony that the human race tries to provide, one with another. The Aborigines of Australia give deference to the dreaming state. They equate it fully with a state of consciousness. I too find my stormy nights as valid as my placid days. Perhaps more energies need to be exerted to pass through the heaves of sleep. But these adventures are as necessary to me as my other existence in the daylight of a world. Storms are not just cosmic nature, but apply as well to dreams of seas on this planet, where I lay on rafts or greater vessels that are given up to the anger of the waters. As a ballerina, I was hung cloud-like in the strong arms of my partner over the raging of the life beneath. I tell this to my doctor, who smiles indulgently. She has never danced and does not understand the stage is not solid beneath the feet of a dancer, but liquid and rolling. She does not understand how I can spend my life without a solid surface beneath me. She does not understand my madness any more than I have understood her sanity. Okay, and then it gets serious. I'm going to read a real short poem that I wrote when I went to Alaska, called The Bear Smiled. Little black bear shy behind the trees, against green backdrop awaiting cue to depart. You are far more ferocious. Oh, but you're far from ferocious. Where are your protectors? We are our own defenders, despite rumors that men and bears are not friends. We feel no need to move away. When we come home at eventide, we will stay in honeycombed voice and say, "The bear smiled." And he did. And I don't know if I have time for a very short one.
Got a minute.
Okay, it's called Sin Eating. I took a bite, just a bite. The sour undertaste moved about my heart. It was a taste I understood through my own hunger. It had the salt of tears and the bitterness of wormwood. But I needed to eat, and sin was all that was offered. I drained the goblet thick with syrup in order to swallow. No cakes, no soft puddings, no honeyed spoonfuls. I did not ask for seconds, but they served them to me. Oh, my stomach protested. The meal ended with a small, wizened apple where the hunger began, the taste of knowledge.
Okay. And finally, to sum everything up for us tonight, we have Cass Sobey. CK, or Cass Sobey, continues a life of curiosity, having retired from her professional businesses and spending more time reimagining. Cass lives in the Valley Forge area of Pennsylvania. She spends most of her time in her studio creating something that has caught her attention, or in her kitchen cooking, the air thick with aromas, or somewhere on one of her walks listening to what is calling her. Her current book, a collection of tiny stories, diminutive tales from the tip of my imagination, June 2022, also contains several unique layered images. She is the author of a book of poetic prose and photography, Musings, Wool Gathering, and Ghosts, which is also on audio. Her first book is entitled Henry the Turtle, a young children's book for all ages. She is currently visiting ideas for a new book. Her writing has been featured in The Reflectionary, Publishers Weekly, Reader's Views, Inside Scoop, and the Midwest Review. Read more about her at www.innerharvesting.com and reach out to her at casssoby@gmail.com. Welcome, Cass.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
This is quite different than what I generally write, and it's something I'm playing with. Or as I tell Greg, or Richard, it's playing with me. So I'm open to it. This is the opening chapter, and it will be a novelette with several stories like this short. Madalena. At some time, somewhere, I knew it would happen. I knew it because I'd been told. Piercing claps of thunder and angry snakes of lightning dominated the night sky. Loud, intense, timpani drum style thunder. What the hell was I doing out driving? The intense wind that rushed through my car window crackled with electricity. Flashes of jagged light felt way too close, feeding the fear already that was inside me. I felt drawn towards something that was pulling me like a magnet. Feeling powerless to get in touch with my logical mind, I was in reaction mode, reckless. All at once I saw her, a vision in a flash of light. One moment the night seemed like liquid velvet surrounding me. Next, the sky lit up like the brightest of bulbs, flickering like an old movie. Almost hitting her with my car, I swerved off the road, nearly driving through the barricade. I caught a glimpse of battering waves below, sharp and craggy rocks. I nearly joined them. Flinging my door open, I got out, hearing the water pounding on the rocks below, running back, not sure of what I'd seen. The woman stood under a single highway light, as still as a statue cast in stone. Then I remembered this was the moment I'd been told about years ago. I'd been in New Orleans, a great place to party and lose myself, needing to do just that as the past year had been especially intense. All my work as an architect had fallen apart on a massive mega-urban project, and I'd been directed to take some extended time off. The project had taken the better part of 2 years. I was angry and depressed. So here I was, on the advice of a friend. I caught a full flight out of London and had to change planes 3 times with layovers. I finally checked into my hotel, tossed my bag on the bed, and headed out for a drink, not having any idea of where I was going except what the bloke at reception had suggested to me. All I wanted to do was sit and drink in the shadows. The bar I found was well off the well-advertised Bourbon Street, and it looked to be quite a dodgy part of town. The surrounding buildings quite vivid with descriptive images. No one was doing any sightseeing here, not a place for tourists or the nice college set. A perfect place for me to disappear into for a few hours, especially as it was just starting to rain. The sound of bluesy music pulled me into a small, hole-in-the-wall jazzy club. Once my eyes adjusted, I spied a long bar with several empty tables scattered around. The lighting was low and created a B-grade movie effect. The horn played and mixed with other sounds from a rough-looking trio. They sounded great. I saw a gypsy reading fortunes at a small table in the back. No one would disturb me here, I thought. Nursing a drink at a table in the back, I took my last swallow and was about to order another when I heard a raspy voice asking me if I wanted my fortune read. Turning, I looked at the woman standing before me. Sure, why not, I thought. I'm not going anywhere in this rain. She pulled up a chair and sat down across from me. She was dressed in multicolored ruffle skirts that hung with a tired, unwashed stiffness. More colorful scarves wrapped around her tumbling hair, and her fingers were rigid and seemed to be molded into claw-like talons. Stroking my hand, I was spellbound with her voice. The hair raised on my skin, her eyes held me. They were black as coal, like looking into a continual deep hole. The gypsy told me I would meet a woman. Flashing lights would surround this woman. She said it would happen suddenly. Mist would rise. I asked her for more. Madlena is what she is called, she said. Be careful. There is more here than I can see right now. So tonight is the stormy night the gypsy had foretold. More disturbing as I realized I knew this vision's name, and she was in trouble. Madlena, Madlena. Chanting the name to myself, I realized the gypsy meant Madalena. Walking slowly over towards the streetlight that bathed her, I put my coat around her shivering shoulders. She wasn't wearing much, a large t-shirt. How long has she been out here? She was freezing. Then her words came tumbling out, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Sayonara, dewa mata o merikakaremashou. That's all I remember from jiu-jitsu.
All right, we don't normally do this, but any final thoughts or comments or questions from anyone here, readers or listeners, or on Zoom? Questions for any of the writers, comments? You folks enjoyed this? I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks to all our writers who shared tonight, and thank you for all you do. And again, happy National Library Week. And feel free to check out the books that some of the writers have brought with them tonight to sell or on the table up front. And thanks again for coming. Thanks everybody on Zoom too.